Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. So guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we highlight all the biggest names you need to know about on game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. So this first news story is an update on the Miami Dolphins Jarvis Landry trade rumors, and this report comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins head coach Adam Gase assured Jarvis Landry this week that he's not on the trade block, a gesture the wide receiver appreciated. Jarvis Landry said, quote, Coach Gase did an amazing job, Landry told Stephen Wine of the Associated Press. Quote, he called me in and he just talked to me. He explained to me the situation, everything that's going on, and that's false speculation. That's all I really needed to hear from him. Regardless of whether the Dolphins have shopped Landry, the contract year player's time in Miami could be winding down. Landry informed Wine that he still has no interest in negotiating an extension once the season starts, giving the Dolphins under 2 weeks to re-sign the prolific pass catcher. They've been in no hurry to re-up Landry, though, so it continues to look as if an answer on his future won't come until next offseason. I think that's probably what's going to happen, to be honest. Obviously, Stephen Ross has commented on the situation in the past, saying that the Dolphins would use the franchise tag on him if it came to that. But there's still a lot of time left, and a deal could still get done. So I would stay optimistic if I were you guys, because the Dolphins, obviously there's been a ton of rumors, but these past weeks, who's to say that the Dolphins have not been playing a contract extension for him? I would not be surprised if that was the case. I think Chris Greer likes Jarvis Landry a lot. He's very, very proud of that draft pick. He's talked about it in the past. So he fits the future of this roster from a GM's perspective. Like I said, Chris Greer likes him a lot. I don't know about Mike Tannenbaum, but Chris Greer has raved about Juice Landry in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did get a contract extension. Not only that, but Adam Gase. If Adam Gase wants something done, he gets something done, and we've seen that so far in this past. But with Joe Haden, who just got released, who we're going to talk about later in the show, and his who knows what we're going to do there. I think we have $9 or $8 million free in cap space. I think the most likely thing that's going to happen is that he will be signed next offseason. All right, this next news story is on Craig Urbich's knee. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors and the reasons why the Dolphins cut him. Craig Urbich's knee injury was expected to keep him out of Week 1, but the Dolphins fear it may be more severe than that, and they decided not to wait it out. So the Miami Dolphins just didn't want to wait it out. So that was, I think, it's a more obvious one. But just in case you're wondering, that is why the Miami Dolphins let go of Craig Urbich. Alright, I saved the best news story for last. If you guys haven't heard, the Cleveland Browns have let go two-time Pro Bowler, and I think he made an All-Pro team. I don't know if it was second team or first team, but I know he made an All-Pro team at one point. Former cornerback for the Cleveland Browns, Joe Haden. And you might be asking yourself why this is Dolphins related. I would have put it on the news doc anyway, even if we weren't connected to him anyway. But Mike Pouncey and Ndamukong Suh are reportedly recruiting Joe Haden to the Miami Dolphins. And as far as we know of teams connected to Joe Haden so far, the New Orleans Saints are a very strong candidate. The Colts are in there somewhere. They've been connected to him in the past in terms of, because he was on the trade block last year, and those were some of the teams that wanted him. So I would expect those two teams to go after him pretty aggressively, especially since both the teams still don't have very, very good cornerback depth. So in terms of cap space and stuff, can we afford him? We actually can. I think we have like $8 million in cap space. I don't think any team is going to be paying him like a ridiculous amount of money. I don't think any team's going to be willing to, get in a bidding war for him. And I think Joe Haden obviously played college in Florida. I can't remember where he grew up, but obviously has Mike Pouncey knows him very, very well. They're good friends. So all of those things are stronger connections to Joe Haden than any other football team. So obviously Lawrence Timmons knows him very well because they played against each other in the AFC North for many years. So Joe Haden has a lot of friends in Miami. Obviously he's familiar with Florida. He played college there at the University of Florida. So there's a lot of things for Joe Haden to like in Miami. And obviously the Dolphins, from a need standpoint, I don't think it's a need. I see a lot of people saying, obviously Joe Haden, in my opinion, just to get it out there, before I start talking about it, of course I want Joe Haden. He's been injured for the last 2 seasons, actually 3 seasons really, and that's really declined in his play, and that's not his fault. If he can, he's the healthiest he's been in many years. And the reason the Browns let him go wasn't because of performance; it was because of the paycheck that they were having to pay him. And obviously, he hasn't played a lot of downs from the majority of that contract. So the Cleveland Browns were trying to cut ties with him last year. The trade never went through. So this year, they decided to let him go. So he still has a lot left in the tank. He's still super young. He's still just a few years removed from being a Pro Bowler, a few years removed from being an All-Pro player, and like I said, he's still in his 20s. So if it wasn't for injuries, Joe Haden would still be one of the top 5 best corners in this league, and he's one of the few corners, when healthy, in the NFL that you can leave on an island. You don't have to have safety. You don't have to shade any safeties over the top. You don't have to have safety help over the top. You can pretty much leave Joe Haden. He's one of the best man coverage corners in the league. He's got good length. He's a pretty physical corner, so that's what the Dolphins like in their cornerbacks. So he fits the scheme, and he's great. Like I said, he's a great man coverage corner. So I think the Dolphins should bring him in. We do have the cap space for it. Not because we need him. I don't think we need him, but he would add depth and versatility to the secondary group for sure. In case if, let's say, Byron Maxwell gets off to another slow start this season, we have more options. So I think the Dolphins should get him just because we'll have more options. And not only that, but I think at some point in the season, he can be a bona fide. I mean, he still has Pro Bowl potential. So anytime a player has Pro Bowl potential, you definitely have to strongly consider him. If we can add a Pro Bowler to the secondary, obviously we should definitely explore it at least. So this is great news. And like I said, he has very strong connections to Miami. So this is a very, very strong possibility that this happens. Not only from obviously Sue and Mike have already reached out to him. It's interesting to see if that was reported by Adam Beasley, by the way. It's gonna be interesting to see if they went through the organization before they did that. And I knowing how that organization works, usually the players, I'm sure this has Adam Gase in some capacity written all over. I'm sure Adam knew about this before they reached out. So again, a lot of things like that for Joe Haden to come to Miami, and obviously we have the cap space for it. So it's a very strong possibility. I think it would be a great signing. Obviously, I was a big advocate of the Dolphins trying to get Darrelle Revis, and this is a better Darrelle Revis situation. Not the fact that he could play safety, but I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber corner, and if you can add that to your secondary, like I said, I mean, man, that's a once. I mean, this is Chris Greer talked about this before the offseason. He said, we try to do a really good job of saving as much cap space as we possibly can, because you never know who's going to get cut. And he said that in his draft press conference, after his offseason press conference, with Mike Tannenbaum. He said that. So again, Chris Greer, it's one of his philosophies is to save as much cap space as you can, because like he said, you never know who's going to get cut. So this is a Chris Greer situation. This is obviously the players want him here. He's got great friends. So there's a lot of things. I wouldn't be surprised if this happened, is basically what I'm saying. This is not a far-fetched thing at all. The fact that the players within the organization, it's not confirmed that the organization have shown interest, but players within the organization are already trying to recruit him. I think hopefully this happens. I think he adds a Pro Bowl presence in the secondary. I think he makes the roster more he raises the talent level of the roster. And I think you can get him for cheap. So, yeah, I think this is a great move if the Dolphins were to pull the trigger on this. And there's a lot of things like I said, if we can add a man coverage corner with that ability, and even if he's not that kind of player anymore, he's still better than 80 to 90% of the corners in the league. So, I think he would be a great signing. So let's move on to the AFC East news you need to know about. And the New York Jets are all over the place in today's news, because they are shopping just about everybody they have is on the trade block right now. And obviously, before we get into this news story, Adam Gase said, when asked about the quarterback position because of Byron Maxwell's, he didn't have the greatest game against the Eagles. When asked about that, he said we will explore every possibility with in terms of cornerbacks. So whether he meant maybe we trade for one, maybe we sign one, whatever he meant by that, this is like a dreamlike scenario. So there's all the stars are aligning. No team, by the way, nothing's gonna happen today. I don't think any team can sign him until tomorrow. And I know his agent said that he will be signed by tomorrow afternoon. So he said that. That's an actual quote. So a lot of things going on there. So let's move on to AFC East news you need to know about. The Jets have shopped cornerback Marcus Williams. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Jets have gauged trade interest in cornerback Marcus Williams recently, according to Tom Pellesso of USA Today, who adds New York has been selling all offseason. That's very, very interesting. Given that Gang Green is set to embark on a full-scale rebuild, the concept of dealing Williams doesn't come as a complete surprise. Given that he's entering the final year of his contract, a restricted free agent Williams is scheduled to earn $2.7 million in 2017. Although none of that total is guaranteed, that's a reasonable figure for a 26-year-old defensive back who appeared in 13 games and played on 450 defensive snaps a season ago. Pro Football Focus assigned Williams middling grades, ranking him as the 67th best corner among 110 qualifiers. Williams is also projected to start for the Jets next offseason as Buster Skrine and Marcus Claiborne hold the honor instead. Williams, if not traded, will serve a valuable backup and special teams player. In 2016, Williams played on roughly 20% of the New York Jets' special team snaps. So, depending on what the Jets want, obviously they want draft picks because they're rebuilding. So we know what they want, but what kind of draft pick do they want for Marcus Williams? It's another thing for the Dolphins to explore. Obviously, Marcus Williams in the past has been when he's lined up in the slot, he's been pretty. When the Jets went 10-6, Marcus Williams was a big part of that. And when they lined him up in the slot, he was very, very successful. So I'm not saying the Dolphins should do it. But it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. Obviously, if we were going after a corner, I would go after Joe Haden. Another Jet that's on the trade block is very interesting because this is obviously not ever going to happen. But you see some people on Twitter this is not going to happen. The Dolphins are very, very comfortable for who they have in their running back room. Jets are shopping running back Matt Forte. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Jets have gauged the trade market for running back Matt Forte. Tom Pellesso of NFL.com Twitter hears. He's healthy now, but it still will be difficult to find a taker for his contract. Forte is owed $4 million in guaranteed salary for the upcoming season, a huge number for an aging running back on the back nine of his career. I'd imagine that the Jets will have to eat at least half of that money in order to make the deal happen. Following 8 productive seasons with the Bears, Forte joined the Jets last offseason on a 3-year, $12 million deal with $8 million guaranteed. Forte went on to record lows in rushing yards, 813, receptions 30, and receiving yards 263. During his first season with the team, the 31-year-old was once one of the league's top running backs, but knee and shoulder injuries have caught up with him. He was placed on IR in December of last season after admitting that he played with a torn meniscus for much of the year, which is insane. The Jets are planning to use Forte and Bilal Powell as their lead running backs, but they gladly reconfigure things if they can find someone to take the money owed to Forte. So he's not going to be a Dolphin, but obviously when he was a free agent, he was heavily rumored to be a Dolphin. But Adam Gase loves Matt Forte a lot. So obviously there's things there, but that's not going to happen. Obviously, I think the Dolphins have a better version of Matt Forte already in Kenyon Drake, who's going to have one heck of a season this upcoming season. So let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. Yes, but a lot of, the Jets obviously are rebuilding, and they're trying to get as many draft picks as they can, which is the smart thing to do. Obviously, Matt Forte is not going to win you Super Bowl rings down 5 years down the line. So, that's why it's weird that they're starting Josh McCown. It's weird. They're like half, their leg is in they're half in, okay, we're going to rebuild. We're doing this. And then, but, obviously Josh McCown's the starting quarterback. So, I don't know. It's weird. Let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have released Bakari Rambo. That's one of the bigger news stories. I can never say his name. Adolphus Washington, found not guilty on firearms charge. So there you go. The Bills, obviously, if you didn't know, Tyrod Taylor suffered concussion in the preseason game against, I can't remember, but there's rumors that they might bench him for Nathan Peterman, who has looked, he's looked okay, and he looked okay in preseason. Obviously, this is big news as well. The Bills have traded their former second round pick, Reggie Ragland, to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, I thought the Dolphins might jump in on the Reggie Ragland sweepstakes, but this is a great signing for the Kansas City for the trade for the Kansas City Chiefs. And obviously, they're not going to trade him within the division, so it was kind of iffy at the start. The Bills sure love to make trades. On Monday, the Bills shipped linebacker Reggie Ragland to the Chiefs for a 2019 fourth-round draft pick, according to an announcement from Kansas City. Ragland, a 2016 second-round pick made by Doug Wally regime, was fighting for a roster spot this summer. The 23-year-old missed the entirety of his rookie season with an ACL injury and has yet to see in live NFL action. The Bills are not only under new leadership, but they have an eternally different defensive scheme than Rex Ryan's 3-4. Has been replaced with Sean McDermott's 4-3. Ragland apparently was not a fit for Buffalo's new look D, but he could find a home in Kansas City's 3-4. Reggie Ragland, obviously a base down guy, so it makes sense that in a 4-3, obviously you need coverage linebackers. In a 3-4, you need pretty much a dual threat. You need basically just to be a little bit simpler. What was I say? Dante Hightower type player. So it makes sense that the Bills traded him away. Interesting to see the Bills too. They've switched back from a 3-4 to a 4-3, from a 3-4 to a 4-3 at least 3 different times, which is insane. So let's move on to the New England Patriots. So obviously the biggest news is that Julian Edelman will miss the entirety of the 2017 season with an ACL tear, and which is obviously devastating to the New England Patriots. It's hilarious to me that the Patriots can lose a player of that caliber, and people literally will sit there and say it does not matter. Of course it matters. Of course it matters. You can't just lose a Pro Bowl receiver and it not matter. I don't care if you have 15 Pro Bowlers on your team or 20 Pro Bowlers on your team. If you lose one of them, it's going to matter. So it's interesting. I think it's going to hurt them a lot. If you look at their record with him and without him, it's pretty significant. And if you look at their receiver core without him, yeah, they have Brandon Cooks, who was the number one wide receiver in New Orleans, and I'm not taking anything away from Brandon, but you look at who's behind him, and you look at Chris Hogan, right, who is at best a number 2, and then you look at Danny Amendola, who is aging and has definitely declined in play since he got to New England. And his days if you look at his tape in St. Louis, and then you look at his first few years in New England, he's just a totally different player now. So their receiver core is not that good. And I know people, I guess, are afraid to say that because everybody's up the New England Patriots' anus right now. But I think it's going to be not devastating, but it's definitely going to hurt. They still have Gronk, who is the most injury-prone tight end in the league, and people are listen. They had Martellus Bennett and Gronk last year, right? With Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan, and Danny Amendola and Mitchell from I can't remember. It's not Mike Mitchell. Mitchell, I can't remember his first name right now, from Georgia, the draft pick. He had a pretty good rookie year. So you take that, right, and you compare it to this year's roster. We got Gronk, you got Dwayne, you got Brandon Cooks, right? You got Danny Amendola, you got who's definitely not, he's not that good, and then you got Chris Hogan, and then so I would take that, especially with the running backs last year, the Super Bowl champion Patriots with LeGarrette Blount, James White. I would take that roster over the roster that they have on offense, not on defense, right now. Not talking like the roster overall. So maybe that's crazy. Maybe I'm insane, but I think the running back situation is worse than it was last year, and I think the receiver core is probably the same, I guess, and I think the tight ends are definitely worse than last year when you have 2 Pro Bowlers on the same team, and Martellus Bennett and Gronk. So, alright, so that's all the AFC East news you need to know about. Let's get into the game, which is obviously going to be this Thursday against the Minnesota Vikings, which should be a very, very interesting game, to say the least. Obviously, this is basically, if you got it or not, preseason game before the Dolphins have to make final cuts from a 90-man roster to a 53-man roster. So this is going to be obviously very crucial for certain players. Obviously, the Dolphins are going to be in the market for linebackers, which they got to consider some of the players on their roster now. Obviously, Chase Allen, if he has another solid game, because he didn't just have a solid game last game, he had a very, very good one. If he has another good, very, very good game, if he dominates again, right, he needs to at least make the special teams unit, for God's sakes. This man has looked very, very good throughout preseason. He's led the team in tackles throughout preseason. He's been a great open field tackler, which is something the Dolphins have lacked without him in the lineup. And he's looked better than Mike Hull has. Obviously, Mike's going against the one, so it's different. And Mike hasn't looked terrible, by the way. I think people are exaggerating of how he's looked. But, maybe Chase needs to get a look, because he's not the most, he's not the most athletic guy. But on base downs, neither is Ray Maualuga. Chase is probably more athletic than Ray Maualuga. Does he have the experience of Ray Maualuga? No. But he probably has better ability at this point in his career. So I don't understand why, I like Chase Allen. I think what he's shown so far, obviously not, I don't understand why we didn't at least put him out there with the ones and see what he could have done against some other ones. Either against the Eagles, Falcons, or the Ravens. I think it would have been a smart move for the Dolphins to pull off. But let's talk about some players you need to know about, right? For number one, Demore Stringfellow. He's absolutely disappeared since week 1 of the preseason, and some of it's not his fault. Obviously, timing with the quarterbacks has been absolutely atrocious, to say the least. The backup quarterbacks have played terrible. And even when they've gotten they didn't allow, the offensive line didn't allow 1 sack with the second team, third team offenses, even with the first team, obviously, but they didn't allow 1 sack against the Falcons, and they still looked pretty bad. So I definitely want to see Demore Stringfellow in his last, I think he's definitely a lock for the roster, but I think, I want to see more from him. For sure. He looked, I still think he showed great things against the Ravens. There were some plays left out there, but the offense overall has looked abysmal. Not the first team offense, but the third and fourth and second team have looked pretty bad. They need to get it together. So definitely want to see a little bit more from Demore Stringfellow. He's going to get a lot more snaps in the game against the Minnesota Vikings. Another player that definitely needs to step it up is Drew Morgan. He had a great offseason. And a great OTAs, a great training camp. Made many plays, and with the ones, by the way. And he's been basically, I don't know what happened to him. So he has not made 1 play in preseason that you just go, well, that's why he can make the team, or that's why he's going to make the team. So he definitely needs to have a good game against the Minnesota Vikings. Needs to definitely step it up. He's looked great in practice. It just has not translated to. It's not even it just hasn't translated yet. So that would be nice to see. Is Drew Morgan have a big game? Thomas Durate, or however you say his name. I apologize. I know people get upset when I say his name, but the kid out of UCLA. I think if you rewatch all the games, you look at the tape. I think he's. So far this preseason, I think he's looked really good. Even though he hasn't got a lot of receptions, a lot of plays have been left out on the field. I think he's looked really good. I think he's route running, he's smooth, he's athletic, and he's a great sub-package guy for the offense. I honestly do not understand. he's looked really good. People forget this man was he was a former 7th round pick, almost mystery irrelevant status. He makes the team last year. Obviously, the tight end group wasn't as I'm gonna say it wasn't as deep as it was this year. That's for sure. So he's gonna have a tougher time making it this year. The roster is more talented than it was last year, but I think he still has a spot on the roster. I think seriously. I mean, he got snaps with the ones last year due to injuries mostly, but I think he's looked good. I'm a huge fan of his, especially in today's league where tight ends are basically an extra receiver. I love how people complain about his run blocking, and you look at Jimmy Graham. Like, Jimmy Graham's a better run blocker. This is best he's ever been at run blocking. But you look at early Jimmy Graham and early Travis Kelce and early all of these great tight ends in the league now, they couldn't block worth a lick. And we're sitting here complaining, but they were obviously great in the passing game. Thomas can do the same thing. He's got the ability to. He's such a smooth route runner, and he's super athletic. So he's got the things you want. He's gotten NFL action before. He's had success. So I like Thomas. Hopefully he has a big game against the Minnesota Vikings and can help sway the coaching staff. I'm a huge fan of his, and I like him a lot. So hopefully he can make the roster. Some of the you really want to look at like Leonte Crew. He's going to make the roster, of course, but definitely want to see him have a better game. He's been somewhat of a no-show since week 1 as well, and that has to do with the abysmal play of the quarterbacks of the 3rd or 4th string. But want to see a little bit more of him. Some other players. George. There's some. Obviously not Stringfellow. Deion Lacey, the kid from CFL. I think he's looked good in. Like, if he looks like he can be a good nickel linebacker in obvious pass situations. He looks like he can be not a great special teams player, but at least a half decent one because of his athleticism. He's a very athletic linebacker, and we've seen that sometimes. And he's not always been able to make the play on the ball, but he's definitely been in the area. And he's not the greatest in between tackles, so he might be a good gunner, I guess. It's very interesting to see if he can't make any plays. I know, and obviously Chase Allen. Hopefully we see more of him, and hopefully, like I said earlier, he can continue to dominate. Definitely want to see some more of. I definitely want to see more of Toy McTire as well. Hopefully he can get some good reps in there. Jordan Lucas, who I'm a huge fan of, obviously former Penn State draft pick. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he has a chance to make the team on special teams. Another player that has been underratedly good is Samaj Perry, the undrafted free agent. I like him a lot. Davion, we'll talk about him in a second, but he did suffer an injury in the Eagles game. I haven't really got an update on that, so you guys are going to have to let me know. I don't know if he's going to play in the Vikings game, but if he does, that's another player to look at. I think he's looked really good. He's looked really good within this offense. He looks very comfortable in this blocking scheme, so I like him a lot. He's a big physical runner, and he's got a lot of athleticism, and he fits the scheme to a T. So I like him a lot too. So we'll see if he came in. I think if he didn't, hopefully the injury's not serious, but he's gonna have a tough time making the roster as well. But he might be a good up man, in special teams. So definitely, I think he could earn a spot as the up man. Him and Storm Johnson. I like Perry more though. So just because he's not only an up man, but he can add depth as well. So he might be somebody to keep your eye on as well. I would look for him to make a lot of plays on Thursday. And obviously Davion Smith has been probably the biggest disappointment. He has a very, very slim chance of making the roster. He's gotten very little reps in preseason, and when he's gotten them, he hasn't really showed anything too outstanding at all. He hasn't showed any explosion. He's looked slow. He hasn't breaked a lot of tackles, which was his MO in Michigan. I'm very, very disappointed in Davion Smith. If there's one guy this preseason, not to bag on him, but if there was one guy this preseason that I've been very disappointed in, it's definitely Davion Smith. So those are the players that definitely have to look out. Some more Cordrea. He's not. I was wanting to list players that are on the roster bubble, more or less, than players that we know that are going to make the roster. Like, Cordrea doesn't need to show anything. I think he's had a really good preseason. So before we get into the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A, we've added this little mini segment in last week's podcast, and that is the rookie rankings for the Miami Dolphins. So let's get into it. Through the first 3 games of preseason, I think last week my rankings were Devon Godchaux's 1, Charles Harris 2, and then Cordrea 3. So right now, my rookie rankings is pretty much the same. Devon Godchaux 1 still, Charles Harris 2, and Cordrea Tankersley. So basically the same. Not basically the same, but the exact same. So yeah, those are my 3 still. I think, Charles Harris's performance against the Eagles was more of the same from the Ravens. I felt like he had basically the same game that he had against the Ravens. I'm not gonna say he struggled against double teams, but it's definitely, he's a rookie. They definitely respected his pass rushing ability, but I think he got less pressures in that game than he did against the Ravens. So he's played consistently. He's still learning in the run game. You can't be doing spin moves when there's a zone play coming your way or the action is going your way. You can't be doing that kind of stuff. So he's still got a lot of things to learn as a rookie. He's definitely, like I said in that video that I did, we know what he's going to be this upcoming season. He's going to be a sub-package pass rusher on third down. I don't think he's going to start over Andre Branch. He might show some stuff mid-season. We might throw him in there. And he obviously has great depth at that position as well. So he could definitely get a lot of playing time, but he's still at my 2. Obviously, Devon Godchaux still continues to be very, very consistent and not only consistent but very productive. I thought he had a couple plays there. One was called back because of a face mask penalty, and not his fault, but great play by him. There's a couple plays there where he had penetration. Needs to finish the play. There's a couple plays where he missed a tackle in the hole, but the penetration he got alone was very, very impressive against the ones of the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's still my 1 because he's played very, very consistently and played very, very well. And then obviously Cordrea's 3, just because he's had a really good game. He had a really good game against the Ravens. He had a pretty dang good game against the Eagles. So he's almost tied with. I would say he's tied with. If there was one thing I would change, I think Cordrea is literally tied with Charles Harris right now, just because of performance and productivity. But I think Charles Harris overall has been more consistent throughout preseason, so I would give him the nod. But Cordrea has looked very, very nice. Very, very nice. And I've seen some arguments that we shouldn't sign Joe Haden because of his growth, and that could stun it. That's stupid to me. I don't think that at all. You can never have too many corners in this league. If you have 5 of them, bless you. I mean, look at the Broncos. They have 3 starting ones on their roster, and when they won the Super Bowl, they had 4 and 5. Same thing with the Seahawks. They went 5 deep. So you can have no more. You can't have enough corners in the NFL, and we know that more than anybody. I mean, look at our roster last year when Tony Lippett had to step up. So definitely you don't want a situation where who the heck we had. There was a game against the Broncos many years ago, and we had to pick up a corner off the street. So if you want a perfect example of how you can never have too many corners, that's the game you guys got to go back and look at. So you can never have too many corners. So I love Cordrea. So those are my rookie rankings. Devon Godchaux 1, 2 Charles Harris, and 3 Cordrea Tankersley. Nobody's moved up from the top 3, which is interesting. So let's get into the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. Before we get into fan Q&A, I want to say really, really quick, if there's anything you guys want to add to the podcast, please let me know. I definitely want to make it a little bit longer. If there's any segments you want to add, if there's anything you want to see changed on in the fan Q&A or any content on this channel, please let me know down in the comment section below. So let's get into the first question. This first question comes from Brandon. He says, hey, why haven't we signed an extra lineman yet? I think it has to do with we're waiting to see, with roster cuts and everything looming, I think we're waiting to see what all goes down there. Waiting to see everybody cut to their final 53-man roster. I don't think we're going to sign another lineman, to be honest with you, Brandon. I think we're happy with what we have in-house. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, do you think we should have waited to sign a linebacker considering the fact that there is way more talent, way more talent became available like a week after we signed Maluga? The Dolphins have said they will explore every option at linebacker. I think they did say something about waiting for roster cuts because So yeah, I think that's a viable option. But the Ray Maluga signing really had nothing to do with the player himself. It was more along the lines of familiarity with the defensive scheme. So I think he just fit in terms of that, and I think that's why he was the Dolphins' #1 choice. Brandon says Joe Haden is now a free agent. Should we pick him up? Heck yeah, we should pick him up. I love Joe Haden a lot. I think he can bring a lot to this Dolphins secondary, and I think he can add more depth and more options there. Never have too many DBs. Never have too many DBs. Brandon says, are we really trying to trade Landry? No, we are not. Brandon says, I think Cordrea should be thrown in the fire so he can get over the learning curve. He shows good coverage skills. How do you feel about this idea? I don't think we should throw him in there just so he can learn. I think the two players in front of him, Xavier and Byron, are better than he is right now, but he has been very, very impressive, and he's more far along than I think a lot of people thought he was. So I don't think we should throw him in the fire just because he should learn. If he earns the spot, absolutely, but I don't think he's earned it just yet. This question comes from Brandy. He says, what are we going to do about the offensive line? I actually think, like I said, if Juwan and Laramie and Mike start, I think we're going to be just fine. I think our offensive line can still be very, very dominant, even if Jesse Davis or Anthony Steen start. So I think the offensive line is actually pretty set for where it is right now. So I don't think you should worry about the offensive line. I think that lineup is very, very, very good. Brandon says Jay Cutler showed flashes on Thursday. Did he convince you enough that that maybe we can beat New England? I don't think it's not about beating New England. I think we can beat New England at home. Obviously Tom Brady struggles in Miami, and we've beat Patriots teams that have won the Super Bowl in recent years and have went to the AFC Championship with less talented roster. So and a better coaching staff. So there's no doubt in my mind that we can do it. It's about beating the Patriots in Gillette. That's the question mark. It has nothing to do with us beating them in Miami. If we went up to Gillette, obviously we haven't won there since 2008, and if Tom Brady is the starting quarterback and we beat the Patriots in Gillette, then the statement that would send throughout the NFL is tremendous. Like, if we go up to Gillette and beat the Patriots, the statement alone is going to be very, very powerful. So it's not about beating them in Miami, it's about beating them in Gillette. And Jay Cutler showed flashes on Thursday. Did he convince you enough? Jay Cutler didn't. I don't think he just showed flashes. I don't think that's the best word to use describing that performance. I thought he played very consistent throughout those drives, and obviously leading 3 touchdown drives is obviously not just flashes. That's consistent. Brandon says, what are the chances we bench Maxwell? If he has another lackadaisical performance, like I said in recapping the Eagles game, I don't think it was more. There were plays where he got beat, yes, but most of it was just effort, and some of it wasn't all on him. Some of it was execution. But if he has another like the effort that he gave in the Eagles game was very, very bad, very, very bad. If he has another lackadaisical performance, I don't think he's going to do that in the regular season. Maybe it had something to do with it was a preseason game. I don't know. But you cannot do that as a professional football player, even if it is a preseason game. You cannot give that kind of effort. So if he has another lackadaisical performance, I would expect him to be benched. And obviously Joe Haden is in the rafters. He's looming around, so who knows what's going to happen there. Brandon says, do you think we move too fast on the Maluga, considering the fact that Ahmad Brooks is available? I don't think Ahmad Brooks fits the scheme. I think he's more of a 4-3 linebacker, a 3-4 linebacker than he is a 4-3 linebacker. He just doesn't fit the scheme. So I think Ray Maluga, just because not only does he know the defense, and he knows the calls, and he's played under Matt Burke for many years, has been very successful, I think he was a better fit. Dennis says, from what we've seen so far, which Dolphins second-year player will have the biggest impact this season? This is a very, 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 very deep question. There's a lot of players from that draft class that I like a lot, and who I think, from what I've seen so far this preseason, have improved I'm going to say dramatically, and that might be an extreme word to use, but I think from what we've seen so far from Laramie, I think playing guard his first year because the knockout of he was obviously the projected #1 overall pick because the Titans needed offensive line help. He was the best offensive lineman in the draft, and obviously we get lucky in drafting him. But the one knock on him, he was perfect in pass protection, but the run blocking definitely needed to improve. He needed to be more physical. He needed to be more involved. And I think playing guard for 1 year literally instilled that nastiness in him, what it takes to block on a consistent level and at a high level in the NFL. Because you saw some of those blocks in the Eagles games. Some of those blocks in the Eagles preseason game on the goal line were major jaw drop in the running game. He just moved people out of the way. So Laramie definitely is going to have a very, very big hat. He's dramatically improved from year 1 to year 2, especially in run blocking. He's just a better player, and I think playing guard, same thing with what the Ravens did with Jonathan Ogden. I think it's had similar effects on Laramie, where it just has helped him be a better tackle. And I think some other players to throw in there. I think Kenyon Drake he looks way better. He looks like an NFL running back now, and I think now that he can use that talent and the information that he's gathered through his first rookie season, he's going to be a very dangerous player. He is a different. Listen, I'm serious, guys. You can quote me now. He's going to have a very, very good season. If he can stay healthy, he's going to have a very, very good season. And Xavier Howard, I think, is probably going to have the biggest impact. From year 1 to year 2, he's looked very, very good. I think he can go to a Pro Bowl this year. Just if he can stay healthy, I think he can make a Pro Bowl. So I think Xavier Howard is probably going to have the biggest impact. Dennis says don't know if you play don't know if you're into fantasy football, but I think Laramie is also going to make a Pro Bowl this year. So both of those guys are. I mean, if we can have 2 players go to the Pro Bowl from that last year's draft class, that's pretty dang good. Dennis says don't know if you're into fantasy football, but who would your top 3 Dolphins fantasy must-haves if you're drafting a squad? I do not play fantasy football. I don't like it. But if I had to, I understand the rules. So if I had to draft 3, I think probably Jay Cutler, depending on what kind of league you're playing in, J.J. And Devontae Parker would be my top 3. Dwight says, I personally felt that Maxwell... I answered that in the fan Q&A. Dwight says, I just saw that Miami is thinking about starting Alteron Werner over Byron Maxwell. What are your thoughts on that as opposed to Maxwell's performance last year? I don't think that's a good idea. I think Maxwell's still a better corner than Alteron Werner. So, obviously with Joe Haden in the rafters, and we don't know what's going to happen there. I think Byron Maxwell hopefully got a kick in the butt from Adam Gase again, which sucks that he had. I mean, I don't understand. I don't know if it was just preseason. I don't know what it was, but he did not have good practices against the Eagles as well. So he just needs to play better. And I think hopefully he'll recover against Tampa Bay. I still have faith that he's going to recover. Dwight says Week 1 versus Tampa Bay. How well does this team do against them? I personally think that it's going to be a shootout. I think when you look at the overall matchup, the thing that Tampa Bay does, the thing that we were better at them definitively last year was turnovers. The Buccaneers turned the ball over a lot on offense. Obviously, Jameis Winston throws a lot of interceptions because of the way his style of play. He throws in coverage a lot, and obviously sometimes that works, and most of the time it doesn't. So I think if we can take care of the football, we'll be in very, very good shape. And if pass protection can be relatively clean on a consistent basis, which it will be if the starters are playing, then we'll be just fine. We should be just fine. We'll be in very good shape. Dwight says, I think that Anthony Steen is decent at left guard. What are your thoughts on him being on the outside instead of backing up Pouncey? I think Anthony Steen is the better choice over Jesse Davis. I think he's more solid across the board than Jesse Davis is. So I'm very, very comfortable with Anthony Steen starting a guard. And obviously, health is a very big concern. So if Mike Pouncey got hurt, obviously that would put us in a conundrum. But I like Jake Brendel as well. So I think Jake Brendel adds great depth as well there. Dwight Keller-Williams says, if Jay Cutler balls out this year, does he retire? No, I don't think he retires. If depending on what your definition of balls out is, if he has a year where he throws 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, has a ridiculous, completion percentage, great QBR, plays very consistent, wins a bunch of games, wins a playoff game, then I think the Miami Dolphins would keep him on their roster. And this hurts me to say because I love Tannehill. I think Tannehill. If I was the GM of the Dolphins, and this is not I'm being realistic when I'm with my opinion on this. If I was the GM, I would keep Tannehill. But if Jay Cutler did have that kind of season, then I think what the Dolphins would do is keep Jay Cutler, and then draft a young quarterback to play behind him when Jay Cutler's time is up. So I think that's what probably would happen. T-Zone says, why didn't we take a look at Amon Brooks yet? I think he would be a much better option at middle linebacker than Ray Maluga. What do you think? No, I don't think Amon Brooks would fit our system. I think he's more of a 3-4 guy than a 4-3 guy. Dwight says, what are your thoughts on the defensive line's dominant performance? I think that I can compare the defensive line to Frankenstein's monsters, as it's a bunch of pieces that were taken from other teams and put on this team, which is now beastly. So, yeah, I can see that. It's more. I would compare it to the Raiders of the 80s and 70s, where they took a bunch of cast-outs on that defensive line with Lyle Zato and Ted Hendricks, who both became Hall of Famers. It's very similar to that. We've done a good job of plucky talent. Obviously, Andre Branch has been a huge surprise for how good he's been in the from what he was in Jacksonville to what he is now. That's true. That's a very, I think, it has a lot to do with Cameron Wake and obviously with the culture. And winning games last year, I think, really turned his career around. Because he's always had talent coming out of Clemson. He's always been a very, very talented player. So he's finally blossomed here in Miami. And then when you look at William Hayes, who has never had, he's always been a very, very good defensive end, especially when it comes to stuffing the run. And a lot of people forget he ran a 4.6 40 time, so he's very athletic, so he can get after the passer as well. So I think the Dolphins have done a great job of addressing their weaknesses, especially on the defensive line, adding William Hayes, knowing that they need somebody who has been very successful at setting the edge. So we've definitely made last year and years past, when you look at our defensive lines, you look at that defensive line on paper and you say, wow. But I think you look at the defensive line on the paper now and you say, wow, but compared to the other ones, there's just more balance there. You don't just have a defensive line full of pass rushers. You have, not only that, but now we have another defensive tackle next to Sue and Devad Gotcha, who's looked very, very, very good. And you can't forget about the two Dolphins that obviously we've drafted in Charles Harris and Devad Gotcha. So I think it's a more all-around defensive line with the addition of William Hayes, and I think they're going to be very dominant this upcoming season. Ronald says, do the Dolphins sign linebacker Ahmad Brooks or not? Your thoughts? No, I don't think so. Alec Jeffrey says, we just released Craig Ervik. Does this mean Asiata moves up in the pecking order? Yeah, by default he does, but I don't think he's going to get anywhere near starting. Jacob B says, will Landry be a Dolphin? Personally, he is gone for 2 second-rounders, in my opinion. Jacob, if you traded Landry for 2 second-rounders, you're a terrible negotiator. If that's all you can get out of somebody for 2 second-rounders for Juice Landry. No, I think all of that was just speculation. And we're going to, a story just popped up that I'm going to save until the fan Q&A is after, but I think the rumors started because, we'll talk about it later after we're done with the fan Q&A, but the Dolphins were talking about acquiring Joe Haden. The report just showed up on my notifications here that we'll talk about it after the fan Q&A, but I think that's why the rumor started. I think since we were discussing getting Joe Haden, I think, the Browns are in the market for a receiver. They're trying to pick up Jarvis Landry. It might have been Jakeem Grant. It might have been Leonte Carew. It might have been Demore. It might have been multiple other people. They might have been discussing a receiver for Joe Haden, but it probably wasn't Jarvis Landry. I think that's why the rumor started. Jerry Dickerson says, should the Dolphins sign Ahmad Brooks? No, I don't think so. A lot of people want Ahmad Brooks. The Gamer12345 says, who is your favorite non-Dolphins player currently in the NFL? Probably Cam Newton. The game, I love watching Cam Newton. The gamer 12345 says, can Devontae step up and become a top 10 NFL receiver? Absolutely. The gamer 12345 says, would you agree that the Patriots and the Ravens are going to be, are going to be the toughest games? The Ravens I would put number one just because that is a hurdle that the Dolphins need to get over. We've struggled against the Ravens many times. It's basically, Michael Jordan had the Detroit Pistons. We have the Baltimore Ravens. We just need to get over them, and hopefully we do this year. The gamer 12345 says, what do you think of the trade for Tavon Austin and Tremaine Johnson for Jarvis Landry? No, I would not pull the trigger on that one. All-Star Gabe says, should we sign Nick Mangold? Yes. I think we should definitely have him in for a workout at least. The Gamer1235 says, if we did trade Landry, what would you trade for him? I would try to pull a Bill Belichick and try to get as much as I could. If I had a gun to my head and I had to trade him, I would try to get as much as I possibly could for him. No, this is Patrick says, what are the top 5 players you trade for Landry? I know you don't want to. I'll give you... okay. If I had to give you a 5, I don't think I would give a... Alright, if there's a gun to my head, and I had to trade him, there's a couple people that pop up into my mind. Alec Ogletree is one of them. I think he's going to be a very good linebacker for many, many years to come. And obviously, I think he could be the future... a very good building piece for the Dolphins on defense. So he would be somebody I would look at, and I would definitely get additional draft picks with Alec Ogletree. I wouldn't just trade him because I think Jarvis Landry's a better player. I wouldn't just trade him for Alec Ogletree, but Alec Ogletree comes to mind. Telvin Smith comes to mind with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they don't need receiver help. I'm trying to think of people that need receiver help. I like Christian Kirksey from the Cleveland Browns, but I don't think he's that talented. I don't think he's talented enough to warrant that at all. But I definitely would want a ton of draft picks as well. I think the number one guy, the guy that comes to mind right away, is Alec Ogletree. I like Alec Ogletree a lot. I think he's a great leader. He reminds me of Ray Lewis, and I know people say that a lot when they're talking about great middle linebackers, but just the way he carries himself it's very much like a Ray Lewis or Michael Strahan. Any defensive player that has been a very good leader and has led their team through the playoffs. He reminds me a lot of that kind of a player. So Alec Ogletree would be one of the guys that I would look at initially, and I would get a ton of draft picks. Maybe some more players, maybe some more starters there. This question comes from, I don't know how to say your name, man. Your name is Enrique. God, Noyola. Noyola. I don't know. Do you think Parker is going to get 1,000+ yards this year? Yes. Yes, I do. I think he's gonna have a very, very good season. Axel Rivera says, let's see here. See, that was not a question. Steven says, if we did trade Landry, who would take his place? I would assume Leonte Carew if that did happen, but it's not going to happen, obviously. Ronald says, do you let's see here. There's okay. He says, Matt, this comes from Mad Gamer. He says, is DP the best jump ball receiver? He's one of them for sure. He reminds me a lot of Dez when he jumps up in the air like that. Should Jarvis be traded? No. Some of these questions are before we got closure on that whole thing. What would you give up to get linebacker Kendricks from the Eagles? I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't even want to trade for him. I don't think I'd make that trade. Rumors are okay. More Jarvis Landry trade stuff. And okay, so that is going to be it for the Dolphins fan Q&A because we're kind of running on low on time right now. So we're gonna move on to, and I appreciate all you guys' questions. There are a lot of great questions in there. But we're gonna talk about this Joe Haden situation that just popped up. I haven't read the report, but it's gonna be very interesting. But that I think that's a good. I think where that rumor came from was this. Because if that's true, the Dolphins were discussing. If the Dolphins were discussing getting Joe Haden and they cut him anyway, that's a crap and dream scenario for the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are in on cornerback Joe Haden. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins are the latest club to express interest in free agent cornerback Joe Haden, reports Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. Miami has been researching Haden in recent days, but had no interest in trading for him. For the former Browns defensive back per Salguero. With fewer than $9 million available in cap space, the Dolphins are searching for a discount cornerback. Haden could fit the bill, given that his contract with Cleveland has offset language, meaning Dolphins or another team could sign Haden for the minimum salary and force the Browns to foot the rest of the cost. While that's a viable option in theory, Haden. Excuse me. My throat is destroyed, so that's why I keep pausing and drinking stuff. While that's a viable option in theory, Haden has already drawn quite a bit of interest since being released this morning. The Cowboys, Chiefs, Saints, and Steelers have all been mentioned as a possible landing spot for Joe Haden, so the 28-year-old could potentially start a bidding war that drives up his price. Hayden's agent Drew Rossiel predicting that his client will have a new contract by Thursday. The Dolphins have already lost cornerback Tony Lippett for the season due to an Achilles injury, so the club is looking for depth in the secondary. Miami currently projects to start Byron Maxwell, Xavier Howard on the outside, although Maxwell is reportedly fighting off competition for free agent acquisition Toronto Werner. Other corners on the Dolphins roster include third-round pick Cordrea Tankersley, Bobby McCain, and Walt Aikens. Haden isn't the most reliable defender, as he's missed 14 games over the past 2 seasons, but if healthy, there's a chance that he could rebound to his previous level of production from 2010 to 2014. Haden was a solid starter, starting 63 games during that time. While Pro Football Focus has ranked Haden poorly over the past few years, the Dolphins don't put much stock in Pro Football Focus grades per Salguero. Obviously, some of the way. Okay, let's get off the Pro Football Focus stuff, but obviously that's when he was injured. But I gotta look. Somebody Google that and let me know down in the comment section below. But I know that he's made an All-Pro team. I don't know if it was second team or first team, but he has made an All-Pro team. So that's very interesting. There's a lot of things in that report that makes me think a couple of things. So obviously, earlier in the show, before we got that report, we were discussing if the organization itself had interest in Joe Haden or not. That basically confirms that they do. So I think this is going to happen, and obviously nothing can happen until tomorrow. But I would fully suspect that the Miami Dolphins go after Joe Haden. And even if he doesn't start, I think he gives, like I said, you can never have too many corners, and he adds great depth. I think he upgrades the talent of the secondary. We definitely could do some more stuff scheme-wise if we added him. He's a veteran corner. He's a great man defender. I think he would be a great addition to the team. Let me know what you guys think of Joe Haden down in the comment section below. And that has been your Miami Dolphins podcast for this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if there's anything you want to change, if there's anything you want to add, please let me know down in the comment section below. A couple housekeeping things. Number one, if you guys are itching for more Dolphins content, please go check out DolphinsTalk.com. They are one of the better fan sites on the internet. They keep everybody updated. They keep you updated on all the Dolphins news you need to know about, just like I do on this channel. They also have their own podcast. They do a daily show there. They do daily not daily articles, but they do articles there as well on the Miami Dolphins. So if you're itching for more Dolphins content, please go check out DolphinsTalk.com and go check out their Twitter at DolphinsTalk. And if you like the Dolphins content in general, please go check out my channel for more Dolphins content like this. If you need something to listen to, I got a lot of stuff on the channel. So, and you're a Dolphins fan, please go check that out. Remember, guys, to let me know if there's anything that you would change, you want to see on the channel. Feedback is very, very valuable when you're doing videos like this. It's very, very valuable. I can't wait to see if the Dolphins go after Joe Haden. It's going to be awesome. So that has been your Miami Dolphins podcast for this week. Remember, guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday, and we give you hopefully all the Dolphins content you would want. So I am Skaggs1083, and I'll see you guys in the next one.